Welcome to the Golden Heart Banquet 2024. With me is one of our very deserving award winners, Janet Berkowitz, and you will see her at the next banquet on August 3rd, 2024 at Knesset Israel Synagogue. And I invite you to listen to Janet's story. It is great. So tell us anything you like, Janet.
Okay. So I am Janet Berkowitz, and I have, for as long as I can remember, have lived with mental health issues. And that is what has guided my life. I began, it all began when I was 9 years old. And it actually began when I was 3 years old. I was being teased and picked on constantly, bullied at school, every day going to school. And by the time I was 9, I had a lot of suicidal ideation. And this brings up so much interest for me in childhood, mental health issues. People, when I was growing up in the 60s, people didn't talk about it, didn't know about it really. And we're seeing it on the rise. We're seeing children being suicidal at a younger and younger age. I don't know how I got through it. I spent about a year thinking about it privately. I didn't tell anyone. I just hid under my bed and in my closet and silently cried till my throat hurt, my lungs hurt. And then I managed to keep going. And my mother put me in a private school because she knew that's what needed to happen. And I started to shine and I started discovering my talents as an artist. I'm a professional mime. I started all of that in high school. And then as an adult, it returned. And by the time I was about 21, I had to put myself in a hospital to prevent myself from taking my life. And that is when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, I will tell you that I do see the advantage of taking meds. I do get a lot of help from the mental health field. And I get a lot of help from the 12-step programs. I do a lot of spiritual study. And I do believe that there is a chemical imbalance here going on. And I also believe that it's a spiritual illness. I really see that in every kind of illness, to be honest with you. So I spent, after 1980, after that diagnosis, I started to look into working in the mental health field. I did it here and there. I taught theater mostly to children for many years. And I did work with special ed kids. And that's when I started to realize this is something I can really do. I can bring creativity. All that theater that I was teaching to children, I thought, let's turn this around and make this work for mental health issues. So I'm an artist. This is some of my art. It's
You're
all
away.
over my house.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful. You
as soon
stepped
as I
away from
move
the mic
away,
for
yeah,
1 second.
you can
Okay.
hear me.
If you could repeat that.
It's all, my artwork is all over my house. It's a museum here. And
Beautiful.
the artwork is really what saved me as a child. I didn't have anything else as a child because of all that bullying and the terror of leaving my house every day, playing sick as much as I could, but I had my artwork. And then once I became a mime, I discovered a way to really shine out in front of people. I started performing at street fairs and bar mitzvahs and weddings and things. And I realized that I could come out. I had the mime face makeup on and I could be silent, but I could really, be outrageous. And I'm told I'm a mix of Harpo Marx, Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, and that kind of thing. I have a lot of physical comedy in me. So that started to help me feel more confident. And then throughout my life, this would come back now and then. This suicidal ideation just kept coming back. And the more it came back, the more I felt that I was meant to work on suicide prevention, not just mental health. And so then I met my husband, actually, we were good friends for many years, but we, in 2003, we did our wedding ceremony. And at some point after some years into the relationship, again, I started having the suicidal ideation, and then he did too. And we were taking turns going in and out of hospitals. And suddenly it really became clear to us that we were meant to work together on this. And Gary Schoenberg, who is also a recipient and a dear friend of ours, started to help us to get this thing off the ground. Other people started stepping in. They helped us design a website for free. Somebody helped us, get onto Facebook. Somebody, different people helped us to do different things. And though I am not what I would call a promoter, that's where I struggle. I was able to get us going enough that people were really appreciating what we were doing. We were designing workshops to address suicide prevention that were actually fun. People were saying it was the most fun they'd ever had. We were using all kinds of games and exercises and role playing, a lot of role playing, where we would have people talk to their suicide. Somebody would play the suicide. And so this really became fascinating to me. And I'm very fascinated by language. So learning how to talk to someone who's suicidal, that became very interesting to us. We would use stuffed animals with our faces on them as children, and we would have them talk to each other as children and really get the inner child coming forth.
That's amazing. You were
Thank
actually
you.
using Gestalt approach
Ah,
with
yeah,
yeah.
I guess so. Right. Yeah, right. So anyway, then it became apparent that my husband and I designed a show on suicide prevention that we called The Wizard of Iz, because it's about accepting what is. But then it became very apparent that he was not going to live much longer. He was born with physical problems, and slowly his body was falling apart. And I just got scared, and I knew I was going to have to do this thing alone. But then I met someone who decided to help me rewrite the play, and I started inviting some friends to work with me while he was still alive. And we started to rewrite the play for more people. And it really changed, and it became much more interesting. And the play is really fun. It's actually got, I dance in it. I'm a dancer. I can do hip hop. I can do ballet. I can do all of these different kinds of things with my body. And so the play really is meant to appeal to all ages. Um, so we started performing the play, and then my husband passed away, and that was difficult for me. I started to have suicidal thoughts again, and but at this point I had found Suicide Anonymous, and that really helped me. I brought it to New Jersey, and then my husband put it on the internet, and that really, I had something to hold on to. And I also forgot to mention that in 1987 I got clean and sober, and since then I have been in probably like 16 different 12-step programs. I just kept handling each addiction, codependency, overeating, whatever it was. As it kept coming up, I kept working on that thing. And then I started working with adult children of alcoholics, where you learn to really take care of your inner child. Mostly I came from dysfunction. We all did. Really, most of us from the 60s came from dysfunction. No one knew what they were doing with kids back then. So after he passed away, I pulled together some other people, and Gary being one of them. And so now we have, what I work on is not just the show, but we also formed something that my husband and I had started called the Bridge Workshop. The Bridge is designed to take any two elements of constituencies that work together and help them talk to each other. So we started out having mental health consumers, which is people with mental health issues, and their providers meeting with each other. My husband and I did that and used all kinds of creative ways for them to tell each other, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. And they had a lot of fun with that. And after he died, I thought, it's a shame to let that thing go. So I pulled together my friends and we formed this bridge team. And we have done that workshop for different constituencies. We've worked with school staff, we've worked with police, we've done it at conferences. And we're really basically looking, how do you bridge the gap between the two different elements, cops and the people they work for? How do we get students to feel safe enough to tell their teachers what's going on, especially with bullying? We do work on bullying. We look at the elements of the bullied, the bully, and the bystander, and we base it on the concept that everyone has been, one or the other at some point in their lives. And so we ask them to talk about that, when, just own that. There's a lot of accountability, and we look at, how to be accountable, not a victim of, what you're going through. And over the years, I have been invited to be on some committees. I'm on the New Jersey Suicide Prevention Committee, and I'm one of just a couple of voices on that committee that is a peer. That's the word we use for mental health consumers. We're peers. And so I just kind of keep raising my hand and saying, let's look at the peer element here. Let's think about how this will sound to one of us, as opposed to the providers. So I'm always looking at how to represent those of us who go through this. I'm also on the New Jersey 988 committee. I don't know if you know about 988. That's the new number. It used to be something talk, and nobody could remember the number. So 988 is now the 911 for mental health.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So that's been out for a couple of years. And so I've, given my opinions there and tried to help out there. I also teach a process called WRAP, WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And this was started by a bipolar woman who wanted to look at the different stages. What are your wellness tools? What do you do when you're triggered? What do you do when things are just starting to fall apart? How about when they are falling apart? What about crisis? And the part that most people don't look at is post-crisis. What do you do when you're out of the crisis? That's when people tend to go back into the hospital because they don't have any plan set up. So I wanted to teach this in a creative way. Other people were just writing theirs out. So I started doing it as a scrapbooking process. I love art, so I started scrapbooking, and I call it Wrap Scrap. So, that's my thing, is that I'm just always looking for, what I'm often asking myself, what would have worked for me? Instead of sitting in all these groups that I sat in forever, where there was just a lot of talk, what would have helped me? And I have always found that starting with an exercise opens dialogue. And I usually start with like an icebreaker or a fun game. And I'll give you an example. We have a game where we throw a ball around. One throws to two, throws to three, throws to four, and one of us steps out of the room. And then we come back in after like three balls are going now, and when we all come back, we go, hey, what happened? Somebody left. What happens when somebody makes an attempt or does take their life? What happens to the community when that change occurs? Most times we just keep going. We don't discuss it. So this is really important, to start talking about. We're so scared to talk about suicide, terrified. And I mean, every time I go through it, I'm terrified to talk about it. It brings up a lot of shame, but it keeps getting a little easier for me to talk about it. And I always feel like every time I go through it, I feel like God's saying, Janet, you got to stand up and get this out there. You must keep this topic out there. So that's my main, I think that's, if I had to put my heart on anything, my heart is in suicide prevention. And now I'm just learning how to let God guide me more with this, trusting God with it. And I'm very grateful that all of these different, I have so many ideas that have come through me. I'm just so grateful to have, the talent and the creativity and the ability to do this. I just need help with the promoting. That's my tough spot, and that's where I'm doing my best to let go and let God. So
Well, I think your story is remarkable, and I think it's so inspirational what you've been able to do to help others. You've triumphed over so much trauma and personal struggles, and you've shared and you've helped others to have a wonderful life because of what you've been able to guide them with. Um, I think it's absolutely wonderful. I love hearing your story. I'm going to look forward to
I
getting
want
to
to
know
share
more
one
about
other
you.
thing with you.
Yes, go ahead.
I changed the word suicide to Sua Love. I'm writing a book by that name. And I try to bring that word in instead. And then recently I wrote a poem about this character, my hero named Sua Love. So now she has become a person to me, someone to look up to, that she's like, she's got a cape.
It
She has a
sounds
cape.
wonderful.
She has a cape with little threads. I put little threads on it. And the idea is that she reaches out to people who are hanging by a thread. And when they're able to give up their threads and grab onto a vine, they give their threads over to her and she puts them with glitter glue onto her cape.
That's
So
really
that's
beautiful.
that's my New Year's slogan.
I'm going to link your website, your work to my website because I think
Okay,
it's really remarkable.
thank
Um,
you. There's a
and
lot of rap scrap on there. You'll see my mime skits.
well, I'm very impressed. I think you're really a wonderful person. I love what you're doing. And I'm so happy that you're going to be with us at the Golden Heart Banquet on August 3rd at Knesset Israel Synagogue, 6:30. And this is Janet Berkowitz, and she has a website. We're going to link it for you so you can find her. So thank you so much. What a pleasure
You're
to get to
welcome.
talk to you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for this
Thank
honor.
you.